Hello and welcome back to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to draft an underbust blazer. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always supporting my channel. So let's dive right into today's video. First, here is my pattern paper, and I'm gonna head to mark out all my basic measurements, which includes my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waistline, and my top length. I'm using 22 inches. The next step is to go ahead to mark your shoulder divided by 2 plus half, and I will go down by 1 inch and I'll connect. So after that, I'm going to find my chest line, which is my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So for this particular pattern, we're going to go ahead to draft the back first. The reason why we're doing this is that we need the back neckline measurements before drafting our front pattern. So I'm just going to rule a straight line at that point, and that will serve as my chest line. And after that, what you have at the armhole, go ahead to divide it into two this way, mark and come out by half inch. So I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4 on the chest line. Connect from the chest line down to the half inch at the center of my armhole and to the shoulder point. I'll go ahead and I'll outline it this way. So this is what I have. Next, you want to go ahead and mark out your neckline. For the neckline, I'm using 3 inches by 1 inch for the back neckline. And you want to go ahead to place your ruler, and you're going to connect and draw it out. Next, you want to go ahead to mark your dart. So to mark your dart is your shoulder to bust point plus 1 inch. So that is where your dart is supposed to start, and you're going to mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2. So my nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches, and I'll go ahead and mark all the way from the bust points plus 1 inch down to the lower part of my pattern. So now I'm going to be taking a dart intake of half inch on both sides, and I'll connect it upwards and also connect at the other side of my pattern. Now I'm going to move ahead and I will connect it to the lower part this way. So after I'm done connecting, I'm just going to go ahead to I'll go ahead and rule out my under bust, because this is an under bust half blazer. So now I'll insert my bust circumference divided by 4, mark my sewing allowance. So we'll be using the sewing allowance of this pattern as our zipper allowance, because this is a blazer and you don't want to have a zipper at the center. I went ahead to mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, and after that I replaced my dart intake, because the initial one I marked, I did not add my dart intake, and I'll add 1 inch for sewing allowance. At the waistline, I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and add 1 inch for sewing allowance. At the lower part, which is the top length, I'll mark the hip circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to mark 1 inch for sewing allowance. So after this, I'm just going to go ahead to connect my pattern. So the first part I'm connecting is my actual measurement with my dart intake. So I'm going to place my French curve and I'll connect. So note, all I'm connecting is the first part with my dart intake. Now after that, I'm going to go ahead to reconnect my sewing allowance. So just like I said, this is a blazer and it doesn't have a zipper at the back. So where we're going to add the zipper is actually the side. You can use an invisible zipper for this and add it to the side of your dress. So I'll go ahead and I will outline all my sewing allowance this way. In order to make my blazer fitted, at the center of this pattern, I'm just going to go ahead and mark 0.25 inches, and I'll take this off. Then you can go ahead to replace it, but I'm just going to leave it because I want the back to be relaxed very well. So after you're done doing this, from the lower part, I'm just going to come up by 1.5 inches, and I'll just go ahead to take a straight line at that point for my blazer. So I'm just going to go ahead to cut this out. So if it's a normal blazer, you're not going to cut this out actually. So I'll cut out the under bust also, and I'm going to go ahead to cut my dart this way so that you can blend it in, so that you don't have to sew a dart when you're sewing the upper part of your blazer. So I'm just going to go ahead to cut it out this way and after cutting that, make sure that you also cut out the dart lines of the lower part, and you're going to be having it in two panels for each side. So after you're done cutting, you're supposed to have like 4 panels for the back, which you're going to tape up together or join it up together. So what you're going to do is to take measurement of your back neckline. So what I have is 3.5 inches. This measurement is very important when you're drafting out the front pattern of your dress. So after that, this is the front pattern, and I've marked out all my basic measurements just like we did at the front. My neckline is 3 by 3, and if you notice, we have like some allowance at the upper part and by the front part of this pattern. This is just to allow us to draw our lapel. So after that, I'm going to go over and I'll mark my nipple to nipple, which is 7 inches divided by 2, and I'm going to mark 3.5 from my bust down to my under bust, down to my waist and my top length. So for this particular pattern, for your under bust, if you want it to be tight, you can go ahead to insert your under bust measurement, or you can just leave it that way. Connect from your bust down to your waist, because for a normal pattern, for a blazer pattern, you don't have to actually work with your under bust. It's just that this is an under bust blazer. So after that, I went ahead to mark half inch at my waistline. So when I was marking this, I actually made a mistake to mark a dart of half inch on my under bust. Please ignore that. It is not really important for this pattern, and I'll go ahead to draw out my dart this way. So just like we did at the back pattern, you're going to go ahead to draw out your under bust, and from here I'm going to go ahead to mark 1 inch, because we're going to be having a lapel for the front part of this blazer. So after I'm done drawing it out, this is what I have at this part. So next, we are going to connect from our neckline all the way down, but before connecting, I'm going to come up by half inch, and I'm going to connect from that point all the way to my neckline on top. So this is what I have. So after doing this, from this 1 inch I came out, I'm going to mark 1.5 inches. You can use 1 inch or you can use more. It just totally depends on how wide or big you want your lapel to be. And on this part, you can decide to make it straight this way, or you can decide to make it a little curvy. So for me, I want mine to be a little curvy, and I'm going to connect and draw it out this way. So after connecting, this is what I have on this part. So I'm just going to go ahead to outline my lapel area. So this is what I have after I'm done outlining it, and next we're going to draw out the neckline. So remember that neckline measurement we measured at the back, which is 3.5. So you're going to place your tape, tilt it a bit, don't make it too straight, and you're just going to measure out that 3.5. So now I'm going to measure 0.5 inches, that's 0.5 inches half at the back, and I will reconnect it. So the reason why I'm doing this is so that your collar is going to relax at the back. So after you're done connecting this, the next step is just to measure how wide you want your collar to be. You can use 4 inches, you can use 3, and you can use 3.5. So it's not like it's a standard, but I'm using 3.5, and after marking 3.5, from this part I'll go in by half inch and I'll come in up by half inch. So sorry, my camera actually cut out that part when I was videoing. So from here, you're just going to connect it to that part, forming your lapel for your dress. And I'm just going to go ahead to outline it. After that, I'm going to insert my measurement, and make sure that your measurement starts immediately at the straight line and not at your lapel. So I will mark my bust circumference divided by 4, add my sewing allowance. Here, you're going to mark your under bust circumference, replace the dart intake, and mark your sewing allowance of 1 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and measure my waist circumference divided by 4. Measure that intake, replace it, and I'm going to mark my sewing allowance. At the top length, I'm going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4, and I'll go ahead to add my sewing allowance. So after I'm done doing that, I'll go ahead to connect my pattern. I'm going to connect all my measurements first. Remember your bust circumference, your underbust circumference plus the dart, your waist circumference plus the dart, and then connect down to your hip. So after that, you're going to go ahead to reconnect your sewing allowance, where you'll be using it as your zipper allowance. You add a zipper by the side, probably an invisible zip, because this is a blazer. You don't have a zip at the back of the dress. And from the thumbnail, from the page actually I got this from, there was no video to show the back of the dress. So we'll be assuming that at the side of the dress we have an invisible zipper. So after this, I'm just going to go ahead. So at the lower part of this dress, I'm going to go up by 1.5 inches. So I want to give it like a little design. Remember, at the back of the dress we also went up by 1.5 inches. So now I'm going to connect it all the way, creating that little curve we have here. So after this, I'm just going to cut out my pattern. So at this point, if you have any question concerning this pattern, please leave your question at the comment section, and don't forget to hit on the subscribe button if you haven't yet subscribed. And you can also go ahead to follow us on our other channel, which is Marky's Closet. So after cutting out my pattern, this is what I have for the blazer. So if you're wondering why the upper part is a bit bigger by 1 inch, that is the lapel area. So after you're done cutting or sewing your dress this way, one side will be overlapping the other side, just like we have at the thumbnail. So I'm going to go ahead to fold over the lapel area so that you're going to understand what I mean by the other side. One side will be lapping the other side of the pattern. So after you're done sewing your dress, obviously the lapel area will be this way. So it will be lapping on it this way, and for the underbust you're going to be cutting another piece for this side. So the collar part of this dress will be on top of the dress. So this is what we'll be having. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. Please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.